Thousand-Year Blood War Ichigo vs Aizen is one of the most debated and controversial hypothetical battles in the entirety of Bleach, and for a good reason. However, lately I've been seeing a lot of Aizen disrespect when paired against Ichigo that I think stems from the fact that 1. Aizen lost to a weaker version of Ichigo in the OG Bleach, leading some people to assume that he stands no chance against a stronger version of Ichigo, which is his true Bankai form. 2. Due to the rushed nature of the Thousand-Year Blood War arc, a lot of the readers either forgot about or misunderstood some key moments and concepts that are essential for properly scaling these two characters. So in this video I'll be going over what both Aizen and Ichigo are capable of, while also clarifying certain parts of the narrative to determine who would win if they fought at the end of the Thousand-Year Blood War arc. But in order to make this fight even possible, we will have to ignore certain narrative elements like Aizen refusing to use his Shikai on Ichigo, him being bound to a chair, or both him and Ichigo being tired after fighting Yuha. Since this is a hypothetical fight, Aizen will be fully unsealed, able to use his Shikai, both he and Ichigo will start with their maximum stamina, and nobody from the Soul Society is going to intervene in this fight. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. It is not up for debate that Aizen was overall much stronger than Ichigo for almost the entirety of the OG Bleach. Aizen was grooming Ichigo for power to drive his own evolution. The only time where Ichigo truly exceeded Aizen's strength was when he had access to the Bankai transformation, as he received the special training with his unified inner powers for 3 months straight. What made the pre-Hogyoku Aizen so powerful is his overwhelming Reiatsu that rendered his opponent's attacks useless and significantly amplified his already impressive Kido skills, his hard-to-counter Shikai. Once someone fell under its hypnosis, it became nearly impossible to 1v1 or even team up against him without being completely outmaneuvered. And finally, his insane planning skills. Aizen typically wouldn't get into fights that he knows has a chance of losing without first preparing a countermeasure. Take his fight against Yamamoto as an example. The truth is, Aizen was almost unbeatable even without the Hogyoku, but after fusing with it, he became even more powerful. And here I would like to briefly explain how the Hogyoku empowers Aizen, because not only is it the most important weapon in his arsenal, but it is also very underrated and misunderstood. The main power of the Hogyoku is that it manifests its master's desires, meaning that whatever Aizen wishes for, the Hogyoku will evolve him to fulfill that desire. Additionally, the Hogyoku is indestructible by conventional means, and since it is physically fused with Aizen, he has effectively become an immortal being. In an anime original scene in the Thousand-Year Blood War arc, Yuha states that killing Aizen in this state would take an extremely long time. This implies that there might be a method to kill Aizen, but it is practically impossible. Or there isn't actually any method, and Yuha was simply capping by saying what he believed to be true. As even the Soul Society, with all of their technological advancements, labeled Aizen as an immortal being and therefore sentenced him to prison for a comically long period. But for the sake of argument, if we arbitrarily assume there is a way to kill Aizen and somehow the Soul Society doesn't know about it, it would likely involve separating him from the Hogyoku and then attempting to kill him in that state. However, the problem is that we have never seen anything capable of separating Aizen from the Hogyoku, not even catching him off guard, killing him, and physically removing it as shown in his brief fight against Gin. Even dealing the strongest blow in the Bleach universe, weakening him to the point where the Hogyoku no longer recognizes him as its master, didn't truly sever their connection. Speaking of which, the Hogyoku didn't exactly reject Aizen, or at least not in the way that you might think. After being struck by the final Getsuga Tensho, Aizen was extremely weakened. As a result, the Hogyoku manifested his true heart's desire by undoing all of his transformations, reverting him back to a normal Soul Reaper, which allowed Urahara's seal that had previously failed to work on Aizen in his transcendent state to finally activate. Urahara's explanation for what happened was that the Hogyoku no longer considers Aizen to be its master. But Ichigo didn't buy this explanation, as he sensed loneliness emanating from Aizen every time their swords clashed. This led Ichigo to believe that Aizen's true internal desire all along was to find an equal, someone who could stand on the same level as him so he wouldn't be alone. And in response, the Hogyoku manifested this desire by undoing all of his transformations, returning him to an ordinary Soul Reaper, while simultaneously healing him. If the Hogyoku had truly rejected Aizen, it wouldn't have kept him alive by regenerating him, and he would have died from Ichigo's attack to begin with. This also explains how Aizen retained his immortality in the Thousand-Year Blood War arc despite being supposedly rejected by the very thing that makes him immortal. So, as in the ending of the Thousand-Year Blood War arc, the Hogyoku can still evolve Aizen if he truly desired. That being said, the Hogyoku is not the only significant weapon in Aizen's arsenal. In fact, pre-Hogyoku Aizen could have soloed most of the Goatee 13 using only his Shikai. However, Thousand-Year Blood War Aizen using his Shikai against Ichigo is not an automatic win as some might assume. As seen in his battles against Gin and Yamamoto, there is a way to counter his hypnosis, and Ichigo could easily figure that out. On top of that, Ichigo far outscales both Gin and Yamamoto, meaning that even if he fell under Aizen's hypnosis, he would be able to react to Aizen's attacks much better than they did. And on a side note, just to get this out of the way, I'd like to address one of the biggest misconceptions regarding Ichigo and Aizen, which is Ichigo can't fall under Kyoka Suigetsu because he far outscales Aizen. This is just blatantly false on multiple levels, to say the least. Kyoka Suigetsu works on Ichigo because why wouldn't it work? If it worked on Yamamoto in the OG Bleach, it would have worked against Ichigo, and if it worked against Yuha in Thousand Year Blood War arc, what could possibly make you think that Thousand Year Blood War Ichigo or any other version of him is immune to Kyoka Suigetsu? The only time I can think of Ichigo truly negating its effects is during the fight against Aizen in the Fake Arc Town arc, as Ichigo truly far outscaled Aizen at that point in both Reiatsu and Dimensionality. But even then, if it wasn't for Ohara's intervention, Aizen would have evolved and Kyoka Suigetsu would have eventually worked if Aizen wanted to use it, leading to Aizen's inevitable victory. Which, spoiler alert, this is how I imagined their fight in the Thousand Year Blood War arc would go. But that aside, the reason Aizen didn't use his Shikai on Ichigo in the Fake Arc Town arc is not because it was futile. According to Aizen himself, he willingly chose not to put Ichigo under hypnosis for reasons that, as viewers, we still don't fully understand. It is not like Aizen acknowledges the fact that Ichigo is capable of negating the ability via the sheer difference in Reiatsu, so he chose not to use it at all. Speaking of which, in one of my previous videos, I mentioned that Reiatsu does not negate hacks. However, after a discussion with fellow Bleach YouTuber Clyde, he convinced me otherwise, and it turns out I was mistaken to a certain extent. In Bleach, any ability, whether it is physical attack or hack's ability, is essentially a form of Reiatsu. If the difference in Reiatsu is significant enough, one can overpower or negate the effect of the ability if they know what they are doing. Which explains how Aizen negated Soivon's ability yet couldn't simply bring his Reiatsu back up to negate Gin's Bankai ability, as he was caught off guard and didn't know what was happening. So one doesn't negate abilities by simply standing still, they need to skillfully apply the Reiatsu in a way that overwhelms or sort of crushes the ability. I know this is not exactly how it works, but it is much easier to visualize. That being said, despite the fact that Kyoka Suigetsu can be negated via difference in spiritual pressure, Thousand Year Blood War Ichigo is not the one to do it, if anyone could at all. Remember that Aizen's Shikai worked against Soul King Almighty Yuha. The crazy thing about that is, since Kyoka Suigetsu affected the Almighty, this means that there was not a single future that existed in which Yuha didn't fall under the hypnosis. And according to Yuha, the Almighty allows him to see countless possible futures, as many as there are grains of sand in the universe. Additionally, Yuha considered Aizen to be a special threat for his Reiatsu. The Soul Society needed seals to restrict the range where Aizen's Reiatsu can take effect, because for the average Soul Reaper, coming into contact with Aizen's Reiatsu is fatal. And even for Captain level Soul Reaper, the mere act of getting close to Aizen will have some serious consequences, and this was a much weaker version of Aizen. And I'm not saying that Aizen can handicap true Bankai Ichigo in battle using only his Reiatsu, as Ichigo is a monster on his own. But my point is, it was made clearly evident that Thousand Year Blood War Aizen has significantly grown in both Reiatsu and strength during his time inside the Mugen, surpassing both Dangai Ichigo and any other level of power he previously achieved. So for Ichigo, Aizen is unkillable, has infinite potential, perfect hypnosis, much higher intelligence, and his Kido spells can no longer be slapped away like swatting flies. Despite having grown so much in power as well, Ichigo doesn't have much to do against Aizen, aside from slapping him around like the bitch that he is. As despite all of the advantages that Aizen has over Ichigo, Ichigo is just overall stronger than Aizen in pure combat. His raw strength, speed, reflexes, and destructive powers easily surpass Aizen's. Yet he will ultimately end up losing, unless Kubo gives Ichigo a Bankai that can do literal miracles. In the upcoming core, both Ichigo and Aizen will get major buffs, and I will probably be updating this video, but as in now, unfortunately for Ichigo, there is no way for him to fully defeat or kill Aizen without any external intervention like sealing techniques for example. Now I know this video is a bit controversial because it was basically me doing tricks on Aizen's meat, and it kinda feels biased and unfair only mentioning what Aizen is capable of and completely disregarding Ichigo. But that's just the hard truth about this fight. In Bleach, aside from Yuha, it doesn't matter who tries to 1v1 Aizen or even team up against him. Unless they are several tiers above Aizen and have a way to seal or kill him, Aizen will ultimately come out on top.